Hello again, everybody. Welcome to a new screencast lecture. Today's topic is acceleration, and today's lecture is brought to you by my wife's brownies, which are really good. So let's get started. I know my mouth's a little full, but that's okay. I'm pretty hungry, and these are really good. Now, when you hear the word acceleration, what are some words that come to mind? What are some of the things you think about when you think of the word acceleration? Well, most people think of speeding up. Like if you think of a race car as like, hey, we need to accelerate, we need to go faster. And that's pretty good, but let's think of a more science-y definition. So the science-y definition of acceleration, like you'll find in your textbook, is this. An acceleration is any change in an object's speed and or direction and how long it took to have that change occur. Let's take a look at a short clip. Well, we're back, and I'm eating more brownie. Now we have that definition of acceleration. Let's go back and take a look at that. That acceleration is any change in an object's speed and or direction. Let's think about three things that we could do to an object to make it have an acceleration. So if we're talking about a car specifically, one of the things we could do is to increase the speed of the car. Let's take a look at a clip. When speed of a car increases, we could call that a positive acceleration. And I'll explain that a little bit more here when we get to this next slide, which is decreasing speed. So slowing down is also a change in speed. Now this can be referred to as a negative acceleration because what you're doing is you're decreasing speed. And increasing speed would be a positive acceleration, decreasing speed would be a negative acceleration. Here's a clip. And here's another clip.
Main gear touchdown. Nose gear touchdown. Atlantis rolling out on runway 22 at Edwards Air Force Base, wrapping up a 5.8 million mile mission. Atlantis completing its 28th mission, leaving the International Space Station with more power generation capability and bringing home Expedition 15 astronaut Sunny Williams after 195 days in space.
And here's another clip.
Whoa! Larry crashes hard right at the finish line. Both cars were kind of hunting towards the center. You can see that Doug's car was moving over there, and Larry's car crashed hard, comes to a stop down in the shutdown area. Safety Safari already rolling on the scene. We'll wait until we get word from the top end. Just an incredible incident here at Gainesville in the third qualifying session at Auto Plus Raceway. We're talking about a car was going close to 300 miles an hour down there, and impossible to tell from this angle exactly what went wrong, but the car got airborne, flying down the racetrack, and has come to a stop up against the concrete wall down there. And we will wait until we hear from the professionals on scene.
And the third way that we can cause an acceleration is to change the direction of the car. So turning, for example. Now, when you turn or change direction, that may change the speed of the vehicle, but it doesn't necessarily have to. In review, we can increase speed, decrease speed, or change the direction to cause an acceleration. Speed and direction are both factors of what measurement? That's right, velocity. That's something that we learned in a previous lecture. We know that acceleration is a change in velocity divided by the time it takes for that change to occur. In other words, it's how fast the car either changes speed or how fast the car changes direction. So turning, why is turning considered an acceleration? Well, since changing direction changes velocity, turning is also considered an acceleration. Another way to think about acceleration is if there's an acceleration occurring, a lot of times you're going to actually feel that acceleration. So think about when you have a roller coaster like this, you're going down the hill. If you've the Diamondback at Kings Island, when you go down those hills, you can definitely feel it. I mean, it almost feels like your stomach is kind of rising up in your body. So how does your body feel when you go down the hill fast? When you're falling, your body feels lighter than it really is. It's like you float up in your seat. And you may have heard about people talking about roller coasters. They may talk about air time, like that, how much air time your body gets when you're on a certain roller coaster. So when you're falling down the hill, your body feels like it's floating. It feels like it's rising up in the seat. And you may have heard of the term G-Force. Now, I'm not talking about like the gerbil movie, if you've seen that, but G-Force is the force of gravity. So this informally refers to the force resulting from acceleration. 1 G would be considered normal force of gravity on Earth. And here you see a picture of one of my favorite rides at Kings Island, sitting around on a bench. So when you're sitting in a bench, you are experiencing 1 gravity, 1 G of force. And when you're on a loop-de-loop, which I actually kind of like. I like roller coasters that do the loop-de-loop. But as you're going up the hill, your body is going to feel certain forces on it. You're going to feel a certain acceleration. As you go down the hill, it's going to feel a little bit different. How does your body feel when it's going to go up a hill, when it goes up the hill real fast? Well, when you're rising, your body feels heavier than it really is. It feels like you're being pressed down on your seat. When you're rising, your body feels heavier than it really is. It feels like you're being pressed down on your seat. You feel heavier. And here's a clip about space training.
Hey, Si, how you doing?
I think you like it? Oh, yeah.
So when you're going up a hill, your body feels heavier, and that's known as positive G's. When you go down the hill, you feel lighter, feel like you're floating up, and we call that negative G's. Here's a clip.
It fell to the lot of 2 other Air Force officers, John Paul Stapp and Eli Beading, to demonstrate that men could withstand G-forces as they would be experienced during a rocket launch and re-entry. On the Holloman rocket sled, Stapp reached a top speed of 640 miles per hour and slammed to a full stop in 1.4 seconds. He suffered no serious or permanent ill effects from the 55G peak deceleration load he took. Beading subjected himself to an incredible 83 Gs in a later test made on the shorter Daisy track. Beading went into a state of shock and for a time was considered to be in a critical condition. 5 days later, however, he was back at work with no permanent disability.
Here's a good question for you. Why don't roller coasters have big, gigantic hills and super fast twists and turns? Wouldn't that be a lot more fun? Well, yeah, it could be a lot more fun. However, too much G-forces can have some pretty bad effects. It causes, stress on your body, may cause you to pass out, might even cause death. So let's take a look at this clip and see what G-forces can do to a person.
Weber rolling out. And he's going to throw deep for Decker. What a grab! Touchdown, Minnesota!
Looks like that hit on Golden Gopher wide receiver Eric Decker didn't feel too good.
Decker shaken up as he got hammered.
The blast from Cal safety Sean Cattouse had enough force to cut Decker's jaw open. And while Decker clearly was uncomfortable after the hit, the Gopher Athletics staff was able to stitch him up so he could head back into the game, which is amazing considering the force his body withstood.
Just to hold on to that ball is a testament to the hand strength of Eric Decker.
But hold on a minute. Just how much force did Decker endure?
How hard was that hit? How many G's did Decker experience during that hit?
To find that answer, we took University of Minnesota physics professor Dan Dahlberg out to the TCF Bank Stadium field to break down the science behind Decker's amazing touchdown catch.
Knowing the time and the distance where he landed, I can now calculate what that velocity was.
To find those numbers, Dahlberg first had to study some film. Using the game footage, he was able to break down the play in several different ways, coming up with estimated speeds of Decker, Cattouse, the impact, and the time it took for both players to land. Next comes the math.
And so that acceleration that he was experiencing
was 345 feet per second squared.
Knowing factors like Decker's speed in the 40-yard dash and the time it took for him to travel between the 10 and 5-yard lines, which was determined by watching the video, Dahlberg was able to come up with an equation that allowed him to estimate the amount of G-force exerted on Decker's body during the brief impact. And the key to doing that was determining the distance between where Decker was hit to where he landed on the ground.
So in terms of G's, I'm going to take this 345 feet per second squared and divide that by the acceleration due to gravity, which is 32 feet per second squared. And when we do this, we find that his acceleration was 10.7 G's.
To be precise, Dahlberg said Decker felt 10.78 G's of force during the hit. Now that 345 feet per second squared divided by 32 feet per second squared, which is the force of 1 G, gravity, and that's how you get 10.78. 10.78 G's of force that Decker suddenly felt during that hit.
Now, that's a pretty big number. I found one report online where Navy carrier pilots undergo acceleration of about 3 G's when they're taking off from the catapult assist on the flight. In car wrecks, it looks like you could have as much as 40 G's. To give you some idea, this 10.7 G's meant if Decker weighs, say, 200 pounds, right at that point, during that collision, he's weighing more than a ton.
Standing on the field with no other forces factored in, Eric Decker weighs 220 pounds. For a brief moment during the impact, Decker had 10.78 G's thrusting him. 10.78 times 220 is more than 2,300, which means for that brief impact, Decker felt like he weighed 2,300 pounds. That's more than 3.5 times the force Navy pilots feel when they're being catapulted off an aircraft carrier's deck. And yeah.
Following the review, the ruling on the field of touchdown has been confirmed.
Decker held on for the touchdown.